If you are like younger me and have it in your head that you would like to live abroad, maybe for a year at some point in your life, I'm here to say, do it. Living abroad is an amazing experience and it'll broaden your horizons, just like vacation traveling does. But actually living abroad, even for just a few months, will be an experience that'll really change you. My first time living abroad was a summer internship in Milan. I had this cute little apartment in the Navili neighborhood, which is this artsy little area with canals. And every morning I would walk from there to the main square of the Duomo Church. My work was right in the Galleria. We spent most of the workday drinking espresso or planning lunch. And then after lunch, I would go shopping or meet a friend for happy hour. On weekends, I would either be dancing all night at those amazing Milan clubs. I was a lot younger then. Or a girlfriend and I took trips to Florence, London, and Paris. It was a dream summer, but it also left me a better person in so many ways. I credit some of my strongest personality traits to having developed during that time. Because for all the glamour, I was also really alone. Yes, I had coworkers and I had made friends, but the amount of help that any of those people were going to give me was limited. So I had to figure stuff on my own, and it really made me a stronger, more confident person. Point being, if you also have it in your head that you would really like to live abroad at some point for just a few months, a year, or longer, I think you should. I think it'll be one of those cornerstone experiences in your life. But also, at some point will never happen if you don't make a plan. So let's make a plan. If it seems like too much to just pick up your whole life and move so far away, I agree. I've done a few big moves. The summer that I just mentioned, and that just left me wanting more. So in 2010, I made a plan to spend a year traveling Europe and mostly Italy, but that ended up being 13 years in Rome. And then more recently, I moved from Rome to the Swiss Alps. Those three big ones I did on my own, and it each took like a year of planning. I'm not gonna count moving from New Jersey to Boston for university, or to Adobe in San Francisco to work after I finished, or even my summer semester in Belfast, because even though those were all big things, they were also traveling the beaten path, part of the pun. And they weren't things that I was planning. It was sort of like a package thing and I was going with the flow. In this video, we're gonna talk about planning a big life change, moving abroad alone or as the main organizer, not as part of a group where someone else is doing the planning. So I want to talk about travel plans, money, visas, and getting your current life kind of ready to leave. And I'm gonna give a lot of specific advice and have a lot of links. So I will make a checklist for you, and if you want that, you can get that at Simply.Digital/move. Let's start with money because it's gritty, it's solid. I'm gonna give you an exact to-do list of what you have to get in order. And if you have a job now that you are planning on quitting, getting all your money stuff in order before you quit is a really good idea. This way you can honestly put in income on all those application forms. You're gonna wanna change your checking account and your credit card to ones with no foreign exchange fees. And your credit card really needs to be a Visa or a MasterCard. That's what's gonna be expected when you're around the world. And it needs to have a chip. That should go without saying, but I'm gonna say, there's no magnetic strips. I don't think I've ever seen a magnetic strip reader in Europe. Sometimes the tap works, but very, very often, I try to tap and then it says use the chip reader. So you need a credit card with a chip. Now, when I did my 2010 move, I got really good advice to pay for the Platinum American Express card. That card has a lot of really nice benefits when you do a lot of traveling that pay for that expensive yearly fee. For example, they'll pay for some of your bags and they give you insurance on rental cars and of course the lounges and just a couple things that make it worth it. Now, some years ago, I personally dropped my American Express card in exchange for the similarly expensive United Airlines credit card. I was flying United or at least Star Alliance so much that that one ended up just being a little better of a deal for me. Anyway, point being, one of those expensive, I'm talking a $200-ish a year fee, credit cards is probably worth it for someone living the expat life. So you should research your options and pick the best one for you. If you do pick American Express, you will of course also need a Visa or a MasterCard with a chip, like I already mentioned. And I also mentioned changing your bank. And here I can give a pretty solid recommendation. Charles Schwab Investor Checking is amazing and it's absolutely the one I recommend. Yeah, go do your own research, but definitely have that on your list of options that you consider. They give interest on checking and have amazing customer service. And the big one, they refund other banks' ATM fees. So that's really huge when you're traveling abroad and using international ATMs. Now, I want to just really quickly talk about the basics of using money abroad, because I don't want to assume like how well traveled you are and like how much you know this. So if you're wondering about like exchanging money and traveler's checks, those are relics of a previous generation. You do not have to worry about either of those things anymore. You absolutely should not get on an airplane out of the US with hundreds of US dollars that you plan on exchanging at the airport once you arrive. The only US dollars you should have with you when you leave the country are like some singles to tip at the airport bar and like maybe an emergency 50 folded up in your sock if it makes you feel safer. When you put your US ATM card into an ATM in France or Italy or anywhere, it's not gonna give you US dollars, it's gonna give you the local currency, in that case, euros. So that is how you get euros in Europe or whatever you need. You don't bring US dollars and exchange them at one of those neon sign kiosks. You will get a better exchange rate going right to an ATM. So that's how you do it. And for big purchases, just use your credit card, just like you would at home. Now, like you will probably need some cash, like at any of those cool markets, or like in Italy in particular, if you try to pay with a credit card for like a 1 or 2 euro espresso or like a 3 euro gelato, they're gonna give you a hard time. They might even just turn you away. But in terms of money logistics, all you need is that ATM card and one credit card, or two if at least one of them has to be Visa or MasterCard. It's simple, that's all you need. Now I have added a third thing to that situation, which is a Wise account. Wise is an online bank that lets you keep a balance in different currencies and makes it really easy to move money between currencies and to just kind of act like you have a bank in whatever local currency you're in. In particular, I use Wise a lot for money transfers. Money transfers, are actually a lot more common like here in Europe than they are back in the US. And for me to like use my Charles Schwab bank account for money transfer, that's like an international money transfer, there's a huge fee. They will actually call me on the phone before they'll clear the money. So that's not what I want to be doing for, it's really everyday thing, doing like a money transfer to another bank account, to an IBAN account, here. So Wise makes that really easy, really low fees, and that's what I do for that. Okay, the money section is already getting a little too long, but I do have one last tip, which is to set up auto payments before you leave. So if you are traveling and having a lovely time and lose track of the weeks, you don't ruin your credit score by forgetting a payment, or get your card frozen and get yourself kind of stuck without any access to money. That's also a nice use for Wise, actually, as like a backup bank account in case you ever don't have access to your main one for some reason. Okay, let's move on to making your travel plans. This is gonna be the fun part. You have some decisions to make. So you're probably gonna wanna do some like journaling or make some plus and minuses list to kind of really think these out and decide what it is you really want. First decision, are you gonna be moving around backpacking style or are you gonna have a home base? When I did my 2010 trip, I spent the first month moving around, and then I had plans to use Rome as my home base for the next 2 months. And I even got myself a scholarship for an Italian language school while I was there. Next question, or actually maybe this should have been first, is job or no job? If you go no job, your time and budget is gonna be limited by your savings. If you're gonna find a real job, then that's gonna determine where you end up based. There is a third option here, which is kind of picking up odd jobs as you go. Certainly in Italy, there are a lot of expats working, I don't think legally. The most common ones are English teacher and au pair, but I'm not gonna go too deep into that because I don't want to give illegal advice. If you have a job that you like now and you think there's any chance you can convince them to let you go 100% remote and be time zone independent, I would really, really, really consider it. That is really the ideal. And if you can pull that off, you should do it. And as you keep making your plans and get into the logistics, another big decision or big thing to figure out is gonna be where you're gonna stay. Back in 2010, Airbnb wasn't a thing. And the way to find short-term rentals was really, really hard. You had to basically show up with just like a hotel reservation, try to meet locals and get them to tell you like what the Facebook groups were, and like get in those groups and try to get like a short-term rental. And I think that was even lucky because like before Facebook, so like, 10 years before then, you had to like go to the universities and look at the message board, like the physical like cordwood message boards, because that was the only place that short-term rentals got listed, because short-term rentals are very often not legal. Anyway, you don't have to worry about any of that because now you can just use Airbnb, at least if you want an apartment. if you're traveling alone, I would really consider youth hostels. That is where the other young people traveling alone are going to be, and you're probably going to have a lot more fun staying there than in a place by yourself. Personally, I did hostels every time I was traveling around and found an apartment whenever I was somewhere for more than a month. But I also ran into people in those hostels who were staying like in that one hostel for a month or more. So it's also like a really good idea, something to consider. Anyway, think about those big decisions that are gonna really, affect everything else, and then start working on your travel bucket list, and then you're gonna start seeing a rough plan develop. I planned out my first 6 months between quitting Adobe in July and spending Christmas back home with my parents. I didn't book things, but I had a rough idea of what I was gonna do. I had that scholarship lined up, and I also knew I was gonna meet some high school friends at Oktoberfest. And then my plan was to, at Christmas, to reevaluate and plan out my next 6 months. Okay, I'm only gonna really shortly touch on visas because I'm not an immigration lawyer and I don't wanna get in trouble. But if you are an American wanting to spend an extended time in Europe, which is all I can really speak for, then you are allowed to spend 90 days in any 6-month period in the Schengen area, which is basically Europe. Now, the 6-month part, a lot of people either don't know or choose to ignore. If you've ever been told you can spend the afternoon in Switzerland and reset your 90 days, that's not how it works. Your 90 days resets 6 months after your first day in the Schengen area. So how are so many Americans living in Europe so much longer? Sometimes they're dual citizens like me, and a lot of times they're just doing it illegally. If you're full nomad, then you can spend your 3 months in Europe and then 3 months in Asia or South America or even North America, lots to do in North America too. And then, your 6 months has happened, you've reset and you're good for another 3 months in Europe. This is all with a tourist visa, which is basically no visa when we're talking about Americans going to the Schengen area. It is just that stamp on your passport. I didn't mean for this video to be US specific, but at least we're talking about visas. It's hard not to be specific because every combination of passport, home country and destination country is gonna have different rules. As Americans, we are really privileged and able to go to a lot of places without explicitly applying for a visa. A lot of places we can just show up and it's fine. If you have more exotic places on your travel bucket list, you're gonna want to check with the US State Department, and they will have lists that tell you exactly what you need in order to legally enter those countries. And yeah, this isn't like overstaying a visa. When it comes to entering, you're not gonna be able to enter without being legal. And even when all this is a hassle, we still have it way better than most other nationalities. If you make international friends when traveling and decide to travel together, you'll probably see how different other countries get treated at the national borders. And it can really be kind of shocking and make you appreciate the hard work of our State Department. Anyway, again, this is all tourist visas. If you get a real job, then you're gonna need a work visa, and your job is gonna help you figure that out. Okay, next is the last section, and it's the stuff that's gonna make this trip actually happen. And it's kind of wrapping up the stuff you've got going on in your home city right now. I was working at Adobe when I left to travel Europe and Italy in 2010. So I waited for my next bunch of stock grants to vest and planned on giving notice for after then. And that gave me not a deadline, but a time scale to make all my other plans around. And then I could plan on giving notice to my apartment. I joined an Italian night course, and they're the ones that hooked me up with that scholarship I mentioned. I also broke up with the guy I was dating. Just sort of in general, closed up all the things in my life that were tied to San Francisco. And a really big piece of advice I can give you if you're planning on doing this at any time is to start selling your stuff now. Anything in the back of your closet, sell it now. I don't care if you're not leaving for more than a year, start reducing your stuff. And keep it in mind when shopping too. Don't ask yourself, does this shirt look good on me? Ask yourself, do I like this shirt more than my 7 favorite shirts? Because I'm only gonna bring 7 shirts with me when I go. All your other clothes are gonna end up donated or in storage. And stuff you put in storage might not even be in style anymore when you come back. Speaking of storage, paid storage can very, very quickly become more expensive than just buying all of your stuff new again. I would really try to avoid paid storage. Now, if you have access to free storage, like at your parents' house, I would still really try to limit it, though this is definitely a do as I say, not as I do situation. I have a ton of stuff at my parents' house. I spent entire visits at my parents' house organizing all that stuff and going through it. They added more flooring to their attic to fit my boxes of stuff. And why? Why do I even keep that stuff there? Most of it could probably be replaced for less cost and effort than the storage bins and the flooring project. And the sentimental stuff, yeah, it's not like we're enjoying it when it's in a box in the attic. Oh, so yeah, even though I'm not following my advice here, my advice is to just not store stuff if you can avoid it. I'm no minimalist, but I do think we can all benefit from taking a few pages from their book and acknowledge that keeping lots of stuff often hurts us more than it helps us. Okay, that's all the big topics I wanted to cover in this video. Again, I made a checklist for you with all those like specific to-dos and links to all the companies I mentioned, and I'll put that at Simply.Digital/move. If you watched all the way to the end, I will actually see that in the video analytics and take it as a sign to make more content like this, or leave a comment. I get like 1 comment a week, so believe me when I say that I read them all and take them to heart. Who am I, by the way? I'm Kate, I'm an entrepreneur. My company is Simply.Digital. I've already put our URL on the screen twice now. I've been living abroad since 2010, as I kind of implied, and I make videos about productivity and organization. So moving abroad is a little bit of a tangent for my channel, but if you like how I explain things, you might also like some of my other videos. And videos about productivity and organizing are probably something that's going to be useful to you as you're planning a big life change like moving abroad. So please do check out some of my other videos, and thank you for watching all the way to the end. Hug, and I'll see you over there. Ciao.